谢谢各位。各位女士、先生，现在邀请各位入座，我们即将开始11点开始的场次。Ladies and gentlemen, we are going forward to the next session for the 3 very wonderful speeches. Please take your seats. 好，各位贵宾、各位女士、先生。刚刚在我们开场的2场精彩的专题演讲当中呢，我想一位外国的专家学者，还有我们国内的循环经济的先驱者呢，跟各位演讲了循环经济的必要性，以及台湾如何利用循环经济展开下一阶段的经济新动能，开创新的契机。这是从一个比较宏观的角度来介绍循环经济的必要。那么接下来呢，我们有3家特邀的厂商企业代表要来分享他们在循环经济这个领域里面的先行经验。因为要投入循环经济这个新的典范转移模式，有一些先行者的示范是极其重要，可以看到最好的案例，也让后续的接续者可以作为参考。所以不管是在思维理念、在策略规划，或是具体的行动方案当中呢，都有值得我们后继者参考的内容。比如说像在国营企业部分，中钢在影片当中已经有介绍，从1994年其实就开始所谓的企业责任跟循环经济的工作内容，但是在这2016年，蔡总统开始启动了这个新概念之后呢，慢慢透过政府的组织跟整合，将循环经济的各项类别整合在一起，进行一个重要概念的推动，以待于要大型的集团、中小企业、微型企业或是新创企业都有机会成为循环经济的最佳案例。那么这些企业有些什么样的策略、行动或者是一些技巧，我们就希望透过接下来这3家企业代表的分享呢，逐一来了解一下。那么这第一家企业呢，跟各位介绍是来自新加坡的一家空调系统租赁公司 Care。他们是以产品服务化的商业模式切入这个市场，他们认为这种具有颠覆性的循环经济商业模式可以协助企业以及它的客户来创造双赢。什么是产品服务化？为什么具有颠覆性？我觉得今天早上在曾司长的致辞当中有提到叫做商业的新模式，就是像 IKEA 它不卖沙发，卖一种舒服的感觉。像飞利浦它不卖灯具，它卖照明的美学。就是从本来的产品慢慢进入到整个服务的解决方案，这就是我们这家 Care 公司所谓的产品服务化。那我们邀请到这位主讲贵宾呢 ，Mr. Dave McInnes 是 Care 客户开发经理，他负责在他销售的各项解决方案当中的空调服务化的组合方案里面，尽可能的去体现 Care 的品牌经验，他提倡产品服务化模式，这些突破性计划都有很多的贡献。我们现在呢，就来欢迎我们这位主讲贵宾，来自 Care 的 Mr. Dave McInnes 做精彩的分享报告。Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the speaker, Mr. Dave McInnes, come up to the stage.
Good morning. Oh. Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to join you. Before I start my presentation, although my time has already started, I wanted a little bit of audience participation. I want to ask two very, very quick questions. And just by a show of hands, answer my question. So how many of you at the coffee break would have wanted milk in your tea or coffee? Or how many of you drink milk in your daily lives, or have milk in your coffee, your tea, and your cereal, whatever? So quite a lot of you. Okay, hands down. The next question is a bit unrelated. How many of you have pets at home? You have a cat or a dog or a cow. Does anyone have a cow at home? No one? Okay, so I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, but if you remember nothing from my presentation, remember that. A lot of people drink milk. No one owns cows. My presentation is Disruptive Business Models for the Circular Economy. And when you get a topic like that, you're expected to present slides that look like that. Light bulbs exploding, matches igniting, and you use words like disruption and transformation and think outside the box. But when it comes to disruption, that's not actually what it looks like. If you ask the top CEOs of the most disruptive brands and companies around the world, they'll tell you that disruption looks a bit more like this. It's stressful. It's difficult. An idea that is disruptive is inherently going to come up against a lot of resistance because you're telling the world to do things differently. You're telling the world to change. So it's very difficult. It requires dedication, it requires passion, it requires resilience, which is why, depending on the studies that you look at, 1 out of 1,000 ideas will not make it to market. 999 ideas will fail, and they won't make it to market. So as we looked at disruptive ideas for the circular economy, we said instead of going through all of this and probably failing, why don't we just steal the idea from someone else? So we looked at disruptive companies and disruptive brands, and we asked ourselves, what do they have in common? So these are in different industries. You've got music, you've got transport, data, software, entertainment. They're all in different industries, but they have one thing in common. And the thing that they have in common is, like us, they stole their business idea. Every single one of those brands stole their idea from somebody else. Not only did they steal their idea, but they stole the exact same idea. It's an idea that the first instance we can find of it was in 1906 in San Francisco. There's a guy called G.W. Maxwell who in 1906 realized that, like all of us, Americans like to drink milk. But like all of us, Americans don't like to own cows. They're big, they smell, you have to feed them, you have to look after them. So you want milk, but you don't want to own a cow. So he invented the milk carton. And when he invented the milk carton, he gave us first the opportunity to buy a service instead of owning a product. And that's, we've mentioned it quite a lot in the presentations this morning, the product as a service business model. So what we wanted to do was sort of do a deep dive into this product as a service business model because it has become so easy to provide services instead of products that, forget the circular economy, forget economics, we now live in a society where people don't want things, they want access. They want access to content, they want access to films, they want real-time, immediate, emergency access. They don't want to wait to buy something and figure out how to use it. So what I wanted to do is just tell you 3 very quick stories. One is, why is product as a service better for your customers? Forget circular economy for a little while. If you run a business, if you're not offering services but you're selling products, you will go out of business. Products are becoming irrelevant. So I'll try and prove to you at the end of this that it's better for your consumers and your customers. The second one is, why is it disruptive? Why has every industry that this business model has gone into disrupted that industry? And then the third one is, what does that mean for the circular economy? So if I talk about customer centricity first, the most customer-centric brand on the planet is probably Apple. And everyone shows the exact same case study on how transformative they are and how customer-centric they are. And I'm a massive Apple enthusiast, but I want to show you a very different case study today. I want to show you a case study of when Apple got it wrong. So in 2003, they started iTunes. And they said, you know, instead of buying CDs and vinyl, you can now buy your music online on our store, and that will revolutionize the music industry. And then they came around in 2011 and said, see, I told you. In 2011, pay-per-track sales, so buying tracks on their store, instead of overtook CDs and vinyl. So they were right. It was a better user experience. Customers preferred that. And that's usually where the case study ends. But if you go a little bit further, in 2017, physical sales overtook paper track sales, which means in 2017, more kids were buying CDs and vinyl than they were buying online and paying per track. So the question is, what happened? What did Apple do between 2011 and 2017 that made that happen? And the answer is, it's not the full story. Because in 2008, someone called Spotify came along and said, if people don't want to own cows, why do they want to own CDs? And they said, I think you should buy music as a service. And that was their only offering. And you can see this is the growth model for most as-a-service businesses anywhere in the world. So this is Spotify's revenue from 2009 to 2016, exponential growth. This is the music market in the US in billions. From 2014, it goes from 4.4 million to 2017, it goes to 7 billion. But you can see all the growth is in that green bar. That green bar is streaming services like Spotify. That green bar is as a service. And then on the right, you can see that in 2017, physical sales made 17% of the market, and digital downloads only 15% of the market. Consumers had told Apple, we don't want to own anything anymore, we want to buy a service. And so Apple then said, well, even us with all of our marketing, with all of our brand, with all of our awareness, with all of our budgets, we can't stand up against this. So they launched Apple Music in 2015. So the reason I use this example is because a lot of you will be engineers or scientists and you like a controlled experiment. This is the only controlled experiment I can find where you have two things on this slide. You have iTunes and Apple Music. It's the exact same product or service. It's the exact same company. It's the exact same brand. It's selling the exact same thing to the exact same people. iTunes is going out of business because they're selling a product. Apple Music is growing exponentially because they're offering it as a service. Customers prefer this business model. Just because customers prefer it doesn't mean it's disruptive. So the question is, why is as a service disruptive? And for that, I want to use a story from a company called Grab. So I believe here you use a lot more Uber, the ride-hailing service. This one is from Grab. The numbers are from Singapore, but they are the same in concept, any company, anywhere in the world. So I did a presentation like this in Singapore. And I worked out to go to from the auditorium afterwards to go and have a drink with some friends of mine would cost me $16 if I drove my car. The reason it cost me $16 is because the car would cost me $10, the petrol would cost me $2, and the parking would cost me $4. These are real data from Singapore. The cost of the car comes from figuring out the total cost of owning a car over its life cycle in Singapore divided by the number of trips it makes. So it's basically cost per trip. Grab came along and said, if people don't want to own cows and people don't want to own CDs, why do they want to own cars? And they offered me this as an alternative. And this, again, is real data. I went onto my Grab and I went from the conference center to the drinking hole at the end, and it was $10. So it's cheaper for me. Now, where does that $10 come from? Depending on where you get your data, the breakdown of your Grab might be slightly different for Uber. The car now is $2. Now, it's the same car at this point. So the question is, why is that $2 instead of 10? And it's just utilization. That car is running 5 more trips versus if I did it myself. Petrol is the same. There's no parking, but you've obviously got to pay the driver, and you give Grab $1. So it's $10. That's better for me. It's cheaper for me. It's a better user experience. But even that isn't really disruptive. Disruption comes because companies like Grab and Uber are now responsible for the largest fleet in history. And when you're responsible for that number of vehicles, you have a tremendous amount of scale. It is all about scale. Therefore, you can justify investing in technology, investing in R&D to bring the cost of your service down. And so if I were to tell you that because of this huge overwhelming pressure to invest in and make their service cheaper so they can compete, they're going to have autonomous electric vehicles, self-driving vehicles in Singapore in the next 3 years. If I told you that, you might not believe me. You might believe this guy, who is their president, who says that by 2022, they'll have autonomous vehicles in Singapore. So the scale unlocked the innovation. So now what does that mean in terms of disruption? Let's run the exact same model. Oops. The exact same model now, if I have an autonomous electric vehicle, the car is only 50 cents for that trip. Because again, this car can now run 24 hours a day. It doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to take days off. Electricity is cheaper than petrol. You don't have a driver at all, so you've just reduced 50% of your cost. And let's say Grab still takes $1. So Grab can still make the money it wants, but it can now offer me that exact same trip for $2 instead of 16. That's disruption. So the first jump is better for the customer, business model innovation. The second jump, because of scale, business model disruption. And you can't compete with that. The journey is more comfortable for me, it's better for me to take that service, and there's no way we're going to be buying cars when that happens. So we said from a circular economy standpoint, it's better if people share. We want people to share because that benefits the circular economy. What I'm showing with this example is it's not just better for the economy, it's better for the consumers, and it's better for the customers, and it's better for the vendors. There is a business case for doing it. So the third story I have is what's the point? We are a very traditional bricks and mortar business. So I come from a company called Care, which is an air conditioning firm. And we sell air conditioning to commercial buildings and industrial buildings like this. And what we would do is for 60 years, we've been going to them and saying, we'll procure chillers for you, we'll procure cooling towers for you, we'll procure control systems for you, we'll put it together and we'll give it to you as a product. And after 60 years, we said, well, if people don't want to own cows, people don't want to own CDs, people don't own cars, maybe they don't want to own air conditioning assets either. So we developed air conditioning as a service. And we've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years. So without going into much detail, essentially what we do is we take over all of the things associated with the cow. So the capital investment into the assets, the utilities that it uses, service and maintenance, repairs, compliance, manpower, everything in terms of owning and operating that asset. And the building owner just buys air conditioning as they use, just the same way that they would buy electricity. So you buy electricity for every kilowatt hour you use. You don't invest in power generation, power plants, things like that. You just buy electricity per kilowatt hour. So now you can do the same thing with air conditioning. But there's a real key difference when it comes to the circular economy. Why is this different to Grab, and why is this different to the Spotify example? The difference is you can see this big word here called utilities. About 50% of the energy consumption of buildings in this part of the world is from the air conditioning system. That's now my responsibility, not my customer's responsibility. If we want to move to a circular economy, we need to move the burden of being circular and the burden of being sustainable away from the customers and onto the vendors, because then there's a business reason to do it. And that's where you will drive any innovation into that industry. So now, because I pay the utilities, I want to make that as cheap as possible. Just like Grab, I want to reduce the cost of offering my service. So, business model innovation, we invest in technology. We invest in new equipment. The air conditioning systems that we build and operate are the most efficient in the world. And it's not because we're trying to be good people, it's because it makes us more money. The business model aligns people, profit, and planet. And that's just been a business model innovation. They can be slightly better. But just like Grab, who have autonomous vehicles, and they have vehicles that can talk to each other, and they can tell each other what to do and how to operate, we did the same thing because we had scale. For the first time in our 60, 70-year history, we had scale. We owned assets around Southeast Asia. So we could therefore justify investing in artificial intelligence. We couldn't do that before. When we were the old Care, we were designing and building systems and giving them to our customers as products. We could not do this. Nothing changed. Our engineering team is the same. Our budgets are the same. Our people are the same. But we changed the business model, and it allowed us to therefore invest in this kind of stuff. And what does that mean? So this is our latest case study. And I just use this as an example of what the as-a-service business can unlock in terms of a circular economy. This is a site I chose. We tried to do it in the hardest site we could find. This is a business park in Pune, about 2 hours outside of Mumbai. It uses a huge amount of air conditioning because you can see the north plant is a shopping mall, but the south plant serves an automotive factory, office buildings, and an education complex. Huge consumers of air conditioning. So what we did is we offered air conditioning as a service. And we found the best way and the cheapest way to provide quality air conditioning for that premises. So we built a brand new air conditioning system. We made it as efficient as we possibly could. We applied artificial intelligence to bring down the consumption. And then we installed solar panels on the rooftop. Had nothing to do with sustainability. It was a business decision. We wanted reliable, cheap energy so we could run our air conditioning system. And the best way to do that was to put solar panels on the roof. And by matching those two things, a better level of service for your customer and a reducing of your cost, that plant is now 100% renewable. The air conditioning system for a business park in India is 100% solar powered, and in fact runs at a surplus, which can run about 50 houses in Singapore for a year, and it's water neutral as well. And the reason I show this as an example is because we didn't change as a company, we just changed what we did. We stopped selling products and we started selling services. And the as-a-service business model well, that's given away the end. The as-a-service business model has been written up in climate change forums, in UN SDG forums, in sustainability forums, because of the business model. And so my point to you today is, it doesn't matter what the product is. It doesn't matter if it's in the built environment, it doesn't matter if it's in conference halls, whatever industry that you're in. If you are a business owner or a director of a business, you should immediately figure out a way how to servitize your business. We have lots of meetings in boardrooms about digitizing your business. You should talk about servitizing it. We are an air conditioning company. No one thought you could servitize that. If you can servitize air conditioning, you can servitize anything. Lifts, lights, solar. There's great examples in solar. So if you're a business owner, don't sell products anymore, sell services. Consumers will thank you for it, and they will give you their business. If you are a consumer, stop buying products. If you stop buying products, people will start selling you services, and the service level will be better, and the circular economy will take care of itself, because they will want to make more money, and they'll want to get more customers. This business model is disruptive inherently. It has disrupted every single industry it has gone into. So if you're in an industry that hasn't got this yet, either be disrupted by it or be the disruptor in it by doing it. Or very simply, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you remember nothing else from my presentation, buy milk, not cows. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Dave Ramakanus. Thank you very much for your presentation. 非常感谢Dave 带来的精彩演讲。好，那我们接下来要邀请的这个厂商呢，是在台湾非常知名的电动汽车厂 Gogoro。Gogoro 是作为能源科技创新改革的推动者，我相信大家都知道。那我们今天邀请到的演讲贵宾是 Gogoro 的产品长彭明义先生，来介绍 Gogoro 在循环经济里头的创新营运方针。我们现在掌声欢迎彭明义产品长。
大家好，很高兴有这个机会在这边跟大家分享一下 Gogoro 对于循环经济的一点小小的进程。好，那因为我有46张 slide， 我要靠近这边一些，如果我等会按不到的话，希望主办能不能多给我46秒钟哈，因为这看起来有点不大 work。果然第一个 ，OK， 好。我们把 Gogoro， 很多人知道 Gogoro， 认为它是一个电动汽车厂商，没错，我们有在生产电动汽车，但是更重要的是，我们把我们自己的 mission 定得更高一点，我们希望能够做到一个更干净、更聪明而且永续能源的一个提供者。好，这个可能跟你现在看到 Gogoro 不大一样。接下来我花大概10几分钟的时间，跟各位介绍一下我们到底有些什么样的 business model， 怎么样来符合我们想要达到这个目标。在这里面有3个很重要的字，就是 clean、smart 跟 sustainability。好，我今天从早上6点半从台北坐高铁下来，今天的天气非常好，但是今天的空气不是很好。我小的时候，天是蓝的，地是绿的，我今天一路过来，天都是灰的。好，这就是最大的差别。我们希望永续能够给我们一个更好的环境，而我们努力在做这件事情。好，在这里面提到3个东西，怎么样一个企业能够做好我们刚刚想要做的结果？3件事情：第一个，产品的设计；第2件事情，商业模式；第3个，我们也尝试在做 sharing economy。好，这其实跟刚刚前面几位讲者讲的东西都非常类似。我们希望用最少的资源 拿到最高的价值，这就是 circulation 最重要的事情。circular economy 是把资源的价值提到最高。Google 现在有4个 business， 您最常知道的是 smart scooter， 就是我们的电动机车。我从这边做开始，好。为什么我们选电动机车？台湾有2200万交通工具，2200万，800万辆的汽车，1400万辆的机车，这些。您知道台湾的 PM2.5 有多少来自于移动污染源吗？就是这些会动的车子，23%。刚才环保署长副署长在这边，23%。23% 里面，你知道每一辆车提供了你多少的污染源吗？机车，特别是机车，好，机车其实跟汽车一样污染。你不要以为觉得机车比较小，它就比较少污染，因为机车空间跟重量有限，所以它制造的污染其实比一辆汽车还高，好。如果我们可以把这1400万辆机车置换成电动机车，我等会有个照片给您看，非常 impactful 的照片，是告诉你我们可以做，而且会对我们的身体健康有很多正面的影响。这个是先看到地球暖化的部分，二氧化碳。电动机车有没有污染？有，我不要告诉你说电动机车零污染。电动机车的污染来自于发电，特别是台湾。台湾有很多电是煤、天然气烧出来的。好。在我们的计算里面，你可以看到第一件事情，二氧化碳的部分，电动机车因为发电产生的二氧化碳是任何油车或者是汽车的1半，甚至是1/3，而这个对你的健康不会有直接的影响，但是对地球暖化有很大的影响，这是第一件事情。第二件事情，红色的部分，各式各样的污染源透过汽油车或汽油机车排放出来的，是几万倍于电动机车因为发电而产生出来的污染源，这些东西就是为什么各位每天上班骑机车的时候要戴口罩。我现在在这会场，左边放一辆电动机车，右边放一辆不管是6期还是7期的环保机车，你把2个都发弄起来，把油门都吹下去，10分钟以后大家都会走开，你信不信？为什么？因为它就是真正在制造这些污染，而这些污染就是为什么大家都很讨厌的叫路边污染，都在城市里面。第3件事情，当我们讲循环经济的时候，资源的有效运用非常重要。所以这件事情可以告诉你，同样1公升的汽油发出来的电，透过电路转换冲到机车上面，可以骑100多公里；而同样1公升的油放在汽车上只能开15公里，放在汽油机上只能骑50几公里。我们要用有限的资源做更多的事情，这也是一个非常重要的事情。所以我们公司选择了做电动机车。在全世界，透过2轮移动的人比透过4轮的人还多。Consider 整个 South Asia 的国家的人民，印度、中国。OK， 好，所以我们做了OK， 我们做了 GoGo One， 那时候第一次出来，2015年，非常的贵。好，我也老实讲，非常的贵。但是它 set 一个新的 benchmark， 叫做有人可以把电动机车做得跟一般的普通汽车一样好的性能。之后，我们在2017年推出了 GoGo Two， 这台车子应该是现在全台湾卖的最好的单一车款，好，包括了汽油车。之后，我们在今年推出了 GoGo Three， 哇，这个是我控还是你控？我们一个人控就好了，好不好？谢谢。OK，GoGo 3是我们迈向国民车的一个更大的一个标的物，好。然后接下来我们9月底的时候才发表了 Viva， 在3跟 Viva 这2个车款上的时候，我们大胆的使用一个新的材质，叫做 PP。这个真的有点辛苦，我刚刚看前面那个讲者的时候，我们永远按不到我们要去的那一张。OK， 好的，这张好。我们在车身上采用了 PP 这个材质。PP 这个材质，第一个它本身就是无毒的，第二个它是可以100%回收的。我们是第一个，可能是全世界第一个厂商把整个车身全部用 PP 材质。那这里面有很多 tangible 的 benefit， 比如说车身更耐用、无毒、更耐撞、不怕刮、好清理。更重要，它是非常非常的环保。好。那在这些东西之下，我们做到一个什么样的？好， 我们想要卖电动机车，老实讲，10%的电动机车的用户是因为环保、永续能源进来买，90%我们的客人不是因为环保这2个字进来买。为什么？因为所有在台湾冠上环保之名的产品都比较贵。OK， 你不会，除非你的经济能力很好，你不会买更贵的产品。如果最便宜的最便宜的产品已经最环保了，你根本不用推动环保，大家都已经在用了。所以一开始我们不是卖环保，我们卖什么？我们卖 stylish 有型、潮流、智慧、性能、便利，这些每个人都想要买一个车子，希望给你的东西。但是你做到了什么？你做到了，实际上你在骑的时候，它不热、不吵、不抖，没有排放，高效能。左边是我卖给你的东西，右边是你拿到的结果。更重要的是，在左边我们可以让你无法抗拒去购买这个产品，而右边因为你使用更干净的能源而尽到了社会责任。这是我们想的东西。我们希望切中消费者的需求，提供他要的东西，而每一个最后买了 GoGo 的车主都会很高兴、很骄傲地告诉他的朋友说：“我替环保尽了一份力。”我这样给那个翻译的人比较多一点的时间可以翻译哈。OK， 来，这个是台北最有名的台北桥，我们叫做机车瀑布。每一天早上，从早上6点半大概到9点半之间，上面一直下来的是川流不断的机车的车流。这张照片是我们在9月的时候办了一个电动机车攻占台北桥的活动。那个上面有1500多辆电动机车，当他们停在那个地方的时候，没有噪音，没有废气，没有任何的污染。这就是我们认为，如果有一天台湾的1400辆机车全部变成电动机车的时候，你们的家园、你的城市、你的巷口绝对会比现在更好。我们希望有一天可以做到那里。今天我们有216000个客人在台湾已经使用 GoGo 的产品，而他们总骑乘里程数已经到了10.7亿公里，非常非常高的里程，表示他们买电动机车不是放在家里面供着，他们是真正拿来通勤。他们全部一起加总起来，减少的二氧化碳公斤数已经高达了8800万公斤。这只是一个开始，我们还会继续做更多。好，接下来我要讲我们另外一个 business， 叫做 Energy Network。好，你买电动车，其实有一件事情你是不想要去管理的，其实是电池。刚才 Dave 他的演讲里面有一个很好的例子，他问说：你们要喝牛奶，你家里要养牛吗？当然不用，大家都要喝牛奶，你不要养牛。那我想问各位，我想问一下，家里有机车或汽车的请举手。好，因为刚才我告诉你的，台湾有2200万辆车，基本上这个 penetration 是90%几了。请问家里面常备3公升、5公升汽油的请举手。没有。好，如果是这个概念，你用汽油车，你不需要在家里面备油。请问为什么你用电动车，你要在家里面自己充电？完全不必要。一旦你不需要去管理电池的时候，很多好事就会发生了。GoGo 的 business model 除了做一个很酷很炫的车子在我们的右手边，更重要是我们铺建了一个叫做 Energy Network。我们的用户，当你没有电的时候，你就骑到任何一个换电站去做电池交换，45秒之内你就可以离开那个换电站，而拿到了充饱的能源。这件事情让很多人爱上了我们的车子，因为他不用再担心充一次电可以走多远。好，在左边是自由，你仍然有你的车子，但是在右边的电池跟网络的部分是共享，是大家一起来享用这个能源网络。因此，我们左边发展了前面讲到智慧车辆，右边我们发展的是智慧能源的网络。在台湾，我们现在已经有1474座电池交换站。 而在今年年底之前，这个数字应该可以超过1550座。我们的用户任何时间点都可以从台北、台中、台南、高雄出发，骑着电动机车环绕台湾一圈。而事实上，我们有非常的多的用户天天在做这件事情。好，不是因为他们有旅游的需求，而他们更想证明一件事：电动机车已经不如你印象中的这么的受到局限。我们在换电网络中的电池一共有47万多颗。而你累积到现在为止，已经做了5500万次的交换，每一天有157000多次的电池交换，这是全世界最大、最 reliable 而且最聪明的电池网络。为什么这么说？因为我们不是在你电池放下去的时候去充电，我们去抓到了、预测了你什么需要换电，我们尽可能的用晚上的电力，用大家不用的离峰时间电力来补充能源。全台湾如果1400万辆汽车全部换成电动机车，你知道会增加能源网络多少的负担？电力的负担是多少？各位有没有一个概念？好，我们去算过，2%，2% 可以去除掉15%以上的移动污染源，而这2%大部分的实际上用电是在晚上，是在各位睡觉的时候，所以对于白天的尖峰影响其实是为之甚微。我们透过这样的网络，我们不只可以改善每个人骑车的经验，更重要可以节省能源，减少空污。OK， 我们现在在网络里面有将近0.6个 gigawatts 的这个电池的总容量。而它可以在未来做一件事情啊。如果有一天我们的这些电池都放在这个充电站里面，而现在有任何一个区域它即将到达了它要跳电的临界点，台湾现在政府的做法就是多盖一座电厂来满足那个尖峰需求，但是我们的这些电池网络是可以把它储存它的电池里面的能源拿出来释放给电力网络，因此我们可以减少电厂的建造，但是去做到供需的平衡，这是我们希望有一天我们可以做到的事情。OK， 这是第二个 business。而很多人就说，那你有这么多电池，电池是不是没有办法回收，丢掉很可怕，制造更多的污染？完全同意。各位手上都有一台手机，对不对？请问各位，过去5年以来，你回收了几只你的手机？举手。你每一只手机都回收的，请举手。这里面我相信是大家对于循环经济最在乎的人。你有谁每一只手机都回收的？你手机的电池去了哪里？没有人可以敢举手，因为电池是你的，所以你不 care。在这个 case 里面，电池是我的，是 Google 拥有的，我很在意这个资产怎么被有效的极大化。因此，当我们的电池用了若干年以后，它让你骑机车不再这么快，不再这么有效的时候，我们会拿来把它 repurpose 做第二用途。我会把它接到了 UPS 备用备源上面，我会把它接到 energy farm， 比如说风力发电后面，当做电力这个备载量。因此，我还可以继续的使用这些电池，即使你不拿来用来骑汽车。到了最后一天，它的电池整个进入生命周期的结束了，我接下来做的事情叫做 urban mining。就是把电池里面这些稀有的元素再全部 recycle 回来，变成新的 raw material， 再去制造新的东西。我们对于电池的管理叫做端对端 end-to-end 的 battery management。我们确保我们在网络里面的每一颗电池可以全部最终回收，而拿到东西的极大化。有了这样的车子，有了这样的网络，接下来我们想说，怎么样我可以让它的使用效率更高？好，我相信今天全世界没有一个车厂敢说我可以 dominate 这个市场100%的 market share。但是如果我们想要让这个网络更为普及，更重要的事情是怎么跟别人取得合作。所以，我们不只生产自己的车辆，我们还把我们的这个重要的零组件跟我们的电池的这个技术拿出来跟别的厂商共享。所以，今天你可以在台湾买到雅马哈的电动机车，使用 Google 的电池网络。你可以买到洪嘉腾的电动机车，使用 Google 的电池网络。我们让这个网络里面的每一个换电站，不只是服务 Google 一家品牌，我们让它可以服务各式各样的品牌，让更多的人可以有机会使用这个已经透过庞大的资源研发制造出来的网络，而共同达到减少污染、增加循环经济的目标。好，最后。没错，刚才其实有很多人在讲说， 其实我们不见得是要做线性经济，我们应该要做循环经济。有些人就只是想要用车，为什么要逼他去买车呢？因此，我们有一个新的服务叫 GoShare， 已经在桃园开始了。概念就是我车子放在街头的任何一个公有的停车位，而透过手机，你可以很轻松的找到一台车，利用手机将这台车解锁，骑上去到你要的目的地之后还给我们。GoShare 是我们最新的一个服务。在这里面，我们用刚才谈的这个能源网络，用刚才谈的这个电池，用我们自己制造的车子，用我们自己的 software， 把它全部捆绑在一起，变成一个另外一种端到端的服务。我们可以最有效的运用车子，而让客人使用到最聪明、最好材料的车子，但是不用去拥有它。而整个对客人诉求还是一样。我不是在讲这个东西更干净、更环保、更省钱，我告诉你是更方便，因为时间、金钱很多时候用钱买不到时间，所以当你捷运停驶了以后，当你知道回程不能够开车的时候，请问什么是最好的交通工具？我们建议全台湾有1300人都会骑着机车，在路边找上一台，直接骑着它到你要的目的地。而透过这个东西，我们也可以去理解人们是怎么运动的，车流是怎么发生的。而透过这些 trip 的这些掌控，我们可以进一步的优化我们的电池网络，也可以去优化我布车的位置，让所有的产品在任何时间点的之内发出最高的效益。好，我们刚刚讲4个 business model， 从最左边的我们的车子，到中间的能源网络，到左侧的，我们把这个车子的基本的这些元件拿出来，让别的车厂可以根据 Gogoro 提供的这个 solution 来做他们的电动机车，一直到最后的共享。每一个产品、每一个商业思维跟每一个概念，都跟我们刚刚最后讲的 product design、business model 跟 sharing economy 有直接的关系。最后的1分30秒，我要讲，要做到干净、聪明跟永续，它真的一点都不容易。更重要是要改变所有人的使用习惯，那更是十分的不容易。一个公司，我们希望把循环经济这件事情，不只是当做一个概念，也不只是当做一个口号在推动它。我们希望它是我们公司的 DNA 的一部分。当我们每次研发一个新产品，每次做一个新的 business model， 每次去想到要怎么样能够让我的客户更高兴的时候，我们永远把这个东西放在最前面。这样，你做出对客户最有吸引力的产品，而他们将会跟随着这个公司，跟随着这个社会，一起达到循环经济的最终目标，用最少的资源创造出最高的价值。谢谢各位。
好，非常谢谢 Gogoro 陈明长彭明先生带来精彩的演讲，很重要精彩的概念跟我们做讨论。好，接下来我们要进行的是第3位企业代表上来分享，厂商是蒂斯曼，这是一家全球营养、化学跟材料的龙头公司。那么今天呢，我们的演讲贵宾是蒂斯曼亚太区工程塑料区的商务总监 Mr. Matt Gray， 他带来演讲主题是 Enabling the Circular World， 就是如何建造一个循环的世界。那待会这边特别要感谢主讲贵宾把他今天的演讲费捐出来给我们亚太循环经济论坛。So special appreciate for the donation from the Mr. Matt Gray. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Matt Gray on stage.
Thank you and good morning. There's only, I'm the third of 3 speakers and we have a panel after me and then we have lunch. So hopefully we don't have any mishaps and the operation works just fine. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey. I'm going to introduce DSM to you. Many of you in this room may not be aware of who DSM is. I'm going to take you through a little bit about our strategy and then I'm going to show some examples of what we're doing to enable a circular world. Hopefully it'll be as good as my previous speakers from Kaya and from Gogoro, who shared, I think, a brilliant example of what they're doing, either from a disruptive point of view or even from an innovative point of view. Now, the theme for us three speakers was pioneers or pioneering. I actually think my compliments to Taiwan. When we looked at that video this morning, Charles, that you put up, that really shows me that you are the pioneers. I think we see it in the DNA, I think, of Taiwan, and it's very inspirational to come to somewhere like this and actually see what you've done over real time and you are continuing to do in your country, so congratulations. A little bit of a history lesson. So DSM, the acronym DSM stands for Dutch State Mines. It's true, over 100 years ago, we were a coal mining company. But over time, we've transformed ourselves. We've evolved considerably. From coal mining, we went to bulk chemicals, bulk petrochemicals, to now we find ourselves as a science-based business and a leader in health, nutrition, and sustainable living. I'll go a little bit deeper into the business segments a little later, but we've gone through a massive transformation, and that transformation continues through the ages. The quote at the top of the screen you see is from our CEO, Feike Sijbesma. He wants to be sure that business is on the hook. Business has to be responsible for what we do and for how we operate in the world today. Building on top of some of Professor's points this morning, we can see there's several themes coming through that are quite destructive for the planet and destructive for the human race as well. We can see over 800 million people that are heading towards hunger or obesity in both developed and underdeveloped economies. As businesses, we need to address that and find solutions for dealing with that problem. The climate change epidemic is well known, it's well regaled. Over 140 million people from either sub-Saharan Africa, from Asia, from Latin America, will need to be relocated because of the impact of climate change, whether it be rising sea levels, whether it be temperatures, and that's going to have a massive strain on infrastructures and economies alike. And finally, we've heard today that 92% of our vehicles' time sits idle in Europe. We overuse resources terribly. Resources that we have in the planet today are finite. We need to make sure that we're addressing that resource use effectively, and that's where we start to talk about circular economy, about being responsible and making sure that we're utilizing a sharing economy and using and valuing the finite resources that our planet has. The world is changing, no surprise, and so are the rules of doing business. If we go back 10 plus years ago, companies like ourselves were focused purely on the fiscal side. We were focused on financial returns. Now we're at a turning point. In the past 2 years, we've relaunched a strategy, which I'll share with you shortly, where we not only look at the fiscal returns for our shareholders, but we look at how we can do well as a business and as a responsible business as well. Society determines our license to operate as a business. Governments are forcing us to be responsible, to give shareholders effective returns, but also to look after our stakeholders as well. We find millennials who are coming into our businesses today, they are the consumers of the future. We must make sure as businesses that the products and solutions that we provide match with their ethics and match with their values. That's where responsibility really comes home to roost with big business today. This is a snapshot of our strategy, which I mentioned we launched in 2018. If you move across the page from left to right, the left-hand side is primarily our purpose. We're a purpose-led, performance-driven company. Purpose-led on the left-hand side, the performance-driven piece on the right-hand side. The performance-driven piece needs to prevail. We need to make sure that we're providing returns for our shareholders, but most importantly, the add that we've had to our business on the left-hand side, our strategy has evolved. We've gone back to the megatrends and we've gone back to the SDGs. We've looked at the SDGs, we've boiled them down, and we've worked out which ones can we as a company focus on the most and the best. Where are our strengths? And how do we turn that into some growth platforms which you see behind me, nutrition and health, the resources and energy cluster, and sustainable living as well. I'm going to dive down on that and help you walk through our strategy so you can understand a little bit about some of the decisions we're making in our business. Previously, we used to be very much, as many businesses are, product push companies. We make products that we think our consumers want. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's evolved. Now, as a company, we're making sure that we're providing solutions that our customers need. And again, I'll share some examples on that shortly. Hopefully my arm is long enough. These are our 3 focus domains that we have. Nutrition, health, climate and energy, and resources and circularity. I mentioned that we didn't pick all 17 sustainable development goals, we picked 5. And these match with our strengths. We can't boil the ocean as businesses. We need to make decisions on what to do and what not to do. So we picked these 5 because these 5, we know as a business, as a corporation, we can actually have an impact and effect on what products and what solutions we can provide not only for our customers but also for society as well. Today, some of our products and solutions are already impacting 2.5 billion people. From the vitamins that we make in our health and nutrition business, from some of the feed enzymes and additives we make for our animal health business, and for some of our material solutions in our industrial cluster, we know we're impacting 2.5 billion lives every day, and that's growing. Let me go back one, just one, not 2. We've always been a company with ambition. We'll continue to do this. You see behind some of the imperatives and some of the metrics we're focused on, not only for greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy consumption, but also our safety of our people and our satisfaction of our people. We want to make sure that we've got happy employees, they're safe, they get home to their families every day, but we want to make sure that they've got the purpose, that they feel like they're coming to their workplace and they're doing something good for the planet as well. These metrics, coincidentally, we set them 2 years ago. In some cases, we'll meet these metrics way before 2030. Personally, I'd like to see us make them a lot quicker. So I know that for this generation and for future generations, we're actually doing the right thing for the planet as well. Okay, so I've got this same problem that everyone else has had. How will we achieve our purpose? So three prongs that we've got. So the first one is improve. What we want to do as a company, we need to be able to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. We need to make sure that we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We need to make sure that we're reducing our usage of water in most of our operations. We need to make sure that we are using energy from renewable sources. So we need to make sure that we're accountable as a business. The second prong is enabling our customers. So our customers, just like ourselves, they want to provide eco, renewable, and responsible products to the marketplace. We have customers like Schneider Electric, we have customers like Volvo, and customers like Apple, who are absolutely dictating to us that there's only one way to move forward, and it's with an eco-sustainable viewpoint. They only want to buy materials from us that are made from renewable energy sources. They only want to buy materials that are made by us from bio or recyclable sources. They are dictating our business model for the future. Herein lies the fact that we need to be able to future-proof our business and make sure that we're actually sustainable ourselves and we'll be around for another 100 years. And finally, advocating, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm sharing our story, I'm sharing our message, and hopefully that inspires other businesses, other companies. And we're happy to be collective in terms of collaboration. Charles talked about it. It's essential, not only in the private sector, but also with the government institutions and across the communities. We need to make sure that we're sharing the best ideas to make sure we have the best outcomes. And one of my examples will show that we actually got together with one of our competitors in the marketplace to bring forward a business solution. 5 pillars of circularity that we have in our business that we focus on all through the design process. Not going to go through it in detail, but reducing, recover, extending, enable, and replacing, we're taking that in a full circular view. When we look at designing our products, we make sure that they can be assembled sustainably, they can be disassembled sustainably, and they can be taken through to a second lifetime after that as well. Resources and circularity, just a quick dive down into this, one of the SDGs that we've chosen. When you look at our business, we're in quite a diverse range of industries, from human health to animal health to industrial applications and materials. To do that, we need to make sure that we're striking all the chords to be able to address circularity. So reducing food and waste doesn't actually make sense in the industrial space, but it makes sense in our nutrition space. Increasing yields for farmers doesn't make sense in the industrial space or the health space, but makes sense in our animal health space. So we need to make sure that when we're charting the course for our product development internally, need to make sure that we're addressing all of the needs which talk to circular and responsible consumption. So now I've got a couple of examples that I'll just take you through. The first one we have is Niaga. It's probably a name no one in this room except for Guy is probably familiar with, and Charles. Okay, 2, fantastic. Oh, 3, 4, oh my gosh, stop it. 5, all right, it's good. Niaga is a floor covering solution that we've created. We created it in the last 5 years. When you think of floor coverings, carpets, exactly what we have here, these are terribly complex products. They're made of different layers of nylon, of wool, of polyester. There's some latex in there. In some cases, there might even be bitumen in there as well. Now, to be able to bring this into a circular theatre, it's impossible to disassemble that and actually get a second lifetime out of it. So we've worked with the Niaga product to make sure we've got a polyester layer, a polyester glue, and a polyester back. So we can use it again and again and again. It can be recycled. Carpet and floor coverings, you can see, is one of the top 5 landfill materials. I think it's in excess of 5% of all landfill in the US is carpet and floor coverings, because it needs to be dumped, it needs to be incinerated, it cannot be reused again. So we've found a business opportunity out of a community and a society problem that exists. The second one I want to talk about is Aculon repurposed. Charles talked about fishing nets. So we've got a little program that we've been working on for over 10 years now in India, where today fishing nets account for at least 10% of all plastics waste in the oceans. In the oceans today, there's over 600,000 tons of fishing nets that are floating around. This is called ghost nets or ghost gear. They're damaged, they're fractured, and they're floating around, and they're causing havoc for marine diversity and for wildlife, and also for shipping as well. We've got a program in India where we incentivize the fishermen to pull back some of these waste nets. So today we pull about 3,000 tonne of nets off the coasts of India. We bring them back, we clean them, we granulate them, and we give them a second lifetime. It's a very simple model, but the indirect benefits are vast. Not only do we get a nice clean feedstock of material, which means we don't need to use fossil fuels as our feedstock, but we're also helping a community on the coast of India. We've created, indirectly, we've created 300 jobs, and we've created income for these people as well, to go on and live their own sustainable lives as well. So a great story, one that I'd love to do in Vietnam, Indonesia, Taiwan, Malaysia. Every area in Southeast Asia that has a coastline has this problem. And we've all seen the photographs of turtles with fishing nets around their necks. It's not a very good look. The third one I want to introduce to you is DSM Endurance Backsheet. And I saw outside Taiwan Sugar is keen to put some solar panels up, so we will talk with you. Today, backsheets, laminated backsheet materials, are used at the rate of about 3,000 to 5,000 tonnes a year. They are non-recyclable. Over their lifetime, They contain fluorine compounds. If you burn them, they will emit noxious, volatile organic compounds. They will emit nasties into the atmosphere, which are not great to breathe in, quite noxious fumes. There is no solution for the current backsheet solution that we have for the solar panels today. So we've created a solution. We've found a material that we've implemented into the application. No difference in performance. It's a backsheet behind the panel, okay? It's a frame. It just sits there. It's recyclable. So the fantastic news is, out of a looming problem when all of these solar panels have to go out of commission, what we've now got is we've got a product which, when it goes out of commission, we can tear it apart very simply because it's not a complex covering like a carpet. We can pull it aside and we can recycle it and give it another life. Another great example of the circular economy being enabled. And the final one is Verimaris. This is from our animal health side of the business. So today, 50% of all fish we eat comes from farmed sources. It does not come out of the sea. Sorry to disappoint you. Now, for that 50% of farmed fish that we use, the farmers and the aquaculture farmers need to use wild fish meal that they catch to be able to replenish, to be able to nourish those fish so they're nice and healthy to put on the dinner plate, or for you to have your omega-3 tablets. Now, we've got together with, like I said, one of our competitors, Evonik. We've got together and we've created a solution of an algae-based material that we can now use as a substitute for the fish meal to feed the fish in the farmed locations. The terrific news is 1 kilogram of algae represents about 60 kilos of wild fish. So we're not overfishing. If we go out into the Taiwan Strait and we throw a fishing line, there's probably not a good chance that we'll get a really nice sized fish. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to replenish the food chain. We're trying to make sure that we reinstate marine biodiversity and we reduce our environmental impact. So again, another story where we're finding a problem and we're coming at it with a business solution, which, yes, it's great, we can make some money out of it. But at the end of the day, this is about our business being very purpose-led and focusing on doing good for the planet as well. These examples I've shared with you, we do get some accolades. This is not why we actually do it. We don't do it to get the nice trophies and photographs on the front page of magazines. We don't do it for that reason. But it's nice to get a bit of recognition, and I think it helps us advocate the story, and I think it helps us share, just like we are today with everyone today. My final slide is that we can't do this alone. You know, we do get in collaborations, as I said, with our competitors, with our customers, with private enterprises, with social enterprises. But my last inspiration is to, for everyone to try and get involved, find the collaboration opportunities, find like-minded partners who do want to work with you, who share the same values, who share the same ethics. And I think that's what we need to focus on, not only as business, but also as an industry and in our local environments as well. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention this morning, and we look forward to moving on now with the panel right. Thank you.
Thank you too. 谢谢。Thank you, Matt. Great. Thank you. 好，各位女士、各位先生，我们刚刚分享了3家企业的案例分析之后呢，我们接下来还有最后一场，在中午之前呢，有一个小小的座谈会。那我们会邀请上午2位主讲贵宾，还有刚刚3位企业代表一起上台，而且我们还特别邀请到荷兰贸易及投资办事处的驻代表季维德先生担任主持人。那现在我们台上呢进行一些简单的场布，稍后我就一并邀请我们5位演讲者以及主持人上台，为我们进行这场座谈。Now the panel discussion will be conducted shortly. 5 speakers this morning and 1 moderator will be invited on stage to host this final session of this morning. 那我特别要介绍一下我们今天这个主持人等一下的论坛主持人呢，季维德，Witcher， 他是荷兰 驻台湾的代表啊，他们在循环经济上做的是挺有成效的啊，在欧洲也是首屈一指。尤其在外面有一个展示馆叫荷兰馆，以前今年在花博的时候呢，展示那个建筑物就在花博的会场，非常高兴那时候也有亲临参观。好，我们现在就邀请到了 moderator Mr. G. Wich is on the stage, and also 5 distinguished speakers also together come to the center of stage. 我们请5位主讲贵宾以及主持人一起到舞台上来。我们进行今天上午最后的环节，综合座谈。Please have a seat. Just take the seat you like. It's all right. And I will give the floor to the moderator, please. Thank you very much. All right, I give the microphone.
Working? Yeah, it's working.
That's good. Come.
We have exactly 9 minutes. But we are all very efficient. I know that. First of all, I keep very short, very interesting in presentations. We clearly go to a new frontier, as Charles mentioned. I'd like to ask the 3 companies one question. We have many companies in the audience that are already engaged in circular economy or are planning to do so. Can you share within 1 minute, each of you, what was your the biggest challenge when you did all this, and what is kind of lesson learned for people in this room when they want to either implement it or go to the next phase in circular economy? Let's start with Gogoro. You mentioned Gogo Share, for instance.
I think the most important part of that is try to find out the common value between you and your customers. Okay, because of whatever great idea, if this is not sellable, the enterprise, the business itself, will not be able to sell moving. We have to be responsible for the shareholder. We have to be responsible for whoever gives us the support, and we also have to produce a quality product and respond for the consumers. So normally what you want to sell is not what the customer wants to buy, unfortunately, especially for this kind of circular economy, sharing things, high quality, environment-friendly products, because of increased the cost. But if you can really figure out a different angle, say, how can I create the value for the customers, and they will buy these things because of this reduce their pain, solve their problem, and make their life better. And then some people will buy. And once we can stimulate the wave, and people will follow the others. So before we reach a 16% market share, it's really, really difficult for us to ramp up. But after we have a lot of users riding a scooter in the street, people will follow, say, hey, I can recognize that. I believe it will work. And that's very important.
Scaling up.
Yes.
Scaling up. Okay, Dave from CARE.
Yeah, swap.
Thanks. I think the biggest challenge we had was that we weren't a startup business who was trying to disrupt an already inherent industry. It's very difficult. I stand up here and I talk about being brave and stop selling products and start selling services. It's hard to do that if you've been doing that for 60 years. And what we didn't do, and why I'm so passionate about telling other people to do it, is we weren't brave. We developed the business model and we ran it the same old way. We didn't restructure our organization. We didn't change our talent. And we just tried to deliver a new service with the same people. So I think the challenge we had was not willing to accept our own belief in that business model. And so what we did 2 years ago is we said, right, we take away the choice. We don't offer products and services, which is what we did in the past. We said we no longer sell products. We canceled contracts. And we stopped offering that as an option for our customers. And we reorganized our entire organization. We had new business units and new titles, new talent, and it made a huge, huge difference. So the challenge is being brave, especially if you're a market leader or you have so much history. It's risky to do that.
Thank you. Daring to make the shift, radical shift.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, look, for us, I think the most important thing was, and I'll use the fishing net example, for us, we were introducing a new value chain into our business. Sometimes before you reach scale, there's a cost impact. It's a negative cost impact. We found this, but what it meant for us was we had to be resilient, we had to be persistent, we had to find a way to make it work. It would be real easy to surrender and go back to our fossil fuel as being our feedstock, but for us, this was absolutely the right thing to do as a business. It was our purpose. We knew that indirectly we could also help, coastal societies and small micro communities. We could still help them subside as well. So we had to make it work. So we had to just put a task force team in there to make sure that we crossed every boundary and we made it cost effective for the future.
Thank you. Moving to government, Janusz, you have been an European Commissioner at the EU. You've been a pioneer in developing policy for the EU directives that came out already very early in 2014. I mean, early in the time of.
Yes.
But what can governments do in Taiwan and Asia, around the world, to accelerate the process? What is their role in coming to a circular economy?
Thanks. I think there are some crucial words which you should understand. One is creating leadership, creating ownership, incentives, cooperation, combining top-down and bottom-up. So if you miss any of that, it will not work. So what I have actually done is to put around the same table colleagues from European Commission, which means that you need to make your program the program also of other colleagues from ministers from the member states, members of European Parliament, civil society, academia representatives, then number of CEOs, trade unions leader of European Union, and consumers leader of European Union. In 3 years, we created a program around which we have agreed. So that was the ownership which actually pushed the whole story ahead. And I actually abused the opportunity because I was forced to do the review of the waste legislation, and I put the waste legislation in the context of overall economic change which is needed. It helped that I'm an economist, but that's not enough.
Keep on doing the good work in Brussels there. Thank you. Last but not least, Charles, you talked already about the new frontiers, what's next. But maybe one part we discussed previously is education. And we talked about top-down and bottom-up, but apparently we still need to convince a lot of people in the societies we're living in about the urgency of going to a circular economy.
The biggest challenge that I have faced during the last few years in promoting circular economy is actually, I use the term fighting with time. In other words, promoting circular economy is really about the future. But mostly the people we spoke to, they focus on the present. So how do you bridge the present and the future is the key. In other words, circular economy is going to be a journey. It's just not a trip. There will be a lot of things we need to collaborate and work together. And you mentioned about education is one of those, the future. For example, as we sit here, we have a lot of people who are business leaders now here. I'm glad to do that. And I hope in due course, we can bring the kids from our elementary schools, junior high schools, college, and all these kids start thinking about circular economy. Because circular economy is mostly about their future. And so I think there's what would I call the sense of generational responsibility that we all ought to have, and that's the message we will need to continue to pass along. And the second thing is that we need to give a sense of possibility by telling people that, you know, what we are doing today is for the future, which means if we extend your period of accomplishment from 1 day, 2 days to 2 months to 20 years, there's extensive amount, ample possibilities.
Thank you. Time's up, it says. That means it's also lunchtime, but before that I'd like to thank so much the speakers flying in all the way from many parts of the world. Janusz from Brussels, from Singapore as well. Well, you're from Taipei. But It's been an enlightening morning for me. Even we're doing a lot on this. I learn every day. Go share. Do it everywhere, please. I love Taiwan. I hate scooters that making a lot of noise and a lot of pollution. I'm very honest about this. Thank you very much. We're going for lunch and we have an exciting afternoon. See you later.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your moderation on this session. Thank you, Gilwich, and thanks for 5 panelists. 我们谢谢主持人以及5位座谈贵宾。我们因为中午时间要非常准时结束啊，谢谢大家的上午参与。好，现场各位女士、各位先生呢，我们接下来要进行一个中午的休息时间啊，我们下一个场次先跟各位报告一下，是1点30分，下午1点30分，我们分成3个会场进行，305、304A 跟304B。如果您下午呢是在305参加塑胶循环议题的话呢，就在原会场；如果你参加的是金属循环议题的话，在304A 会场。如果是参加另外一个生物循环议题的话，在304B 会场，大家各位可以参考 APP 就可以知道，就在同一个楼层不同的房间。那稍后等一下各位到外场领取餐盒的时候呢，就用您的识别证领取一个餐盒，可以直接到您下一个下午会场去用餐，直接在里面就可以用餐了。我们今天的餐食呢，有采用一些食物里程跟碳足迹的一些理念，餐盒呢也是属于回收性质，所以您用完餐之后，如果可以帮我们分类一下，而且餐盒送回到原来的领取处，非常非常感谢。好，那我们就有1个多小时的时间，让各位可以做交流以及用餐。我们下午1点30分再邀请各位回到3个会场，谢谢大家今天的上午参与，谢谢。